Hello gamers, it's Tom Sidener, the Lonely Gamer, and I'm here again with Nick Jones, the co-owner and general manager of Titan Games in Springfield, Illinois. And today, Nick and I are going to present our top 10 games of all time. So we spent the last week mulling it over. I know both of us struggled a little bit. I had a pretty easy time with my 1, 2, and 3, but the rest of mine were pretty hard. I think Nick had a hard time. He had a lot of games
Yeah, so I made the mistake / made the right decision to essentially put a Facebook post out and just ask people like what games they enjoy to make sure I didn't like forget something that I'd played recently or played a long time ago that I really enjoyed. And the list ended up being really long at that point. But there were some that were easy for me to parse down, but man, getting down to 10 was extremely difficult.
Yeah, I tried the same thing. I asked my wife, what games do I like? And she said, I don't know. So she was absolutely no help at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you got too much help. I didn't get any help. But we both managed to get our top 10 games of all times. And so we're going to start. We're going to actually start with a couple honorable mentions. I know we both have a couple games that we want to mention that didn't actually make our list. And so I'm going to let Nick start and do his honorable mentions. So
sure. My first honorable mention is actually a trio of games. I don't remember who did it, but somewhere here at Titan it got dubbed the Micro Trio because we have Fleet, which is a game about fishing, collecting fish, and building up stock. Great Heartland Hauling Company, which is another fantastic small box game that just has a ton of strategy built into it. And Bonanza, so you're being farming. So you're farming, trucking, and fishing for your Micro Trio.
Yeah, I played the Bonanza before, and it is a really fun game. You know,
and it's a great, easy game that you can teach almost anybody.
Yeah.
So, the other one I had on here was Cashing Guns, which it's just fun to point foam guns at your friends and steal their loot. So, I mean, how do you go wrong with that?
That is a great game, and every time we have a family get-together, my niece, who's like, I think she's like 9 now, she loves to play that game, but then she always loses and always cries at the end. So, I'm not sure why she wants to play it every time. But
one of the other reasons I like that game is it actually scales really well from like 4 players up to 8, I think is technically the cap, but you can really play with it.
Actually, I think it goes to 10.
10? Okay.
Yeah, it plays a
large number of players, though, very easily.
Yeah, so... Alright, so for my honorable mentions, my first honorable mention is a series of games, and that's the Legendary Encounters games. I absolutely love the Legendary Encounter games. I have the Aliens one and the Predator one, and I just think they're very thematic, and my game group loves to play them because it almost feels like you're playing through the movie or the show or whatever you're playing. And really, one of my biggest disappointments for this year was that they didn't make the Buffy Legendary Encounter.
Yeah.
So that was kind of weird, and so like I really like the Legendary Encounter game. So that's not on my list, but it's a great series of games that I like to play. The other one that's on my honorable mention is a game I just started playing, so I couldn't theoretically put it on my list, but my game group just started playing Gloomhaven, and we've played it one time, and so I don't really have enough, you know, information to kind of put it on the list, but I've enjoyed it so far, and so I wanted to give it as an honorable mention. So
the 60-pound box is worth a mention.
Yeah, it is heavy. It's definitely a heavy box. So
cool.
Okay, so I guess what we're going to do here for our top 10 is we'll alternate. I'll go ahead and I'll go first and do my 10, and then I'll have you do your 10, and then I'll have you do your 9, and we'll just kind of go back and forth. So for me, my number 10 game is Blue Moon City. My wife and I play that game a lot, and we love to do things and have the dragons see it and give out the dragon scales and everything, and it's a really pretty game. The cards are really pretty. It's not a very difficult game, but it's a game that we seem to bring to the table a lot when my wife and I play. So Blue Moon City is one of my favorite games. It doesn't get played a lot with my game group because it is only a 4-player game, but it is a game that me and my wife actually play a lot. So.
I just played a couple weeks ago. I think it's the 2-player version of the game where you're like trading the dragons back across the table. Yeah. I thought it was fantastic. I had never played it before, and I was really, really surprised. Very good game.
So that's my number 10.
My number 10 is something I kind of had to put on the list just because it's a game that's played very broadly, and it's Magic the Gathering. We kind of opened it up to not necessarily tabletop, or not necessarily board games, and I thought it was important to put on there just because it's a game that there are hundreds of different ways to enjoy Magic the Gathering. Whether you are playing the game, collecting the cards, observing the art and just enjoying the art, taking part in social get-togethers to trade cards, cosplaying is a whole nother realm of Magic the Gathering that's sort of grown and exploded over the last 4 or 5 years. But there's just so many different ways to enjoy the game, in a casual format or in a competitive format. There's so many different ways to have fun with it. And I honestly didn't start playing Magic until 4 or 5 years ago at this point. And I've just been really surprised, and it's been a pleasure to meet all the people that enjoy that game in so many different ways.
And it's been around forever. I mean,
over 20
you
years
can't
old
name
now.
another game that's got the legs, I don't think,
Yeah.
that Magic the Gathering has. So, yes, definitely a good addition to the thing. So, your number 9?
Yeah, my number 9 was Codenames. We're coming up on holiday season here, and Codenames is a game I always like to have with me when I'm traveling to meet family or friends. It's an easy game to play. You can play with a large number of people or a small number of people. As long as you have at least 4 people, you can play Codenames. And you can play up to 10 or 12 people if you really want to. They've come out with a number of different versions, whether it's Disney or Marvel, or they have a new duet version that's actually really, really good 2-player version of the game as well. But I just went with the original Codenames. It's been out for a year and a half, 2 years now. Was Party Game of the Year for a year and a half, I think, and still holding pretty strong in there. But fantastic game for a group of players that maybe aren't necessarily board gamers too.
Yeah, I actually teach a class, and in my class we have teams. It's a software engineering class, and I actually make my teams play Codenames against each other. It's a really good team-building exercise for them to learn to communicate with each other. So that is an excellent game for this.
Part of the fun for me is like playing it with different groups of people,
Yeah.
and seeing like maybe somebody has a different idea of how to give a clue for certain words, and it's interesting to see how those different minds work as
Yes,
well.
definitely. All right, my number 9 is the DC deck building game.
Okay.
So I know that's probably not on a lot of people's top 10 list, but I do like the Cerberus engine, and I am a DC fan, and so the theme and the engine together really pull it together for me.
Sure.
I'm usually pretty easy to play that if anybody ever wants to play it. If they say, hey, let's play the DC deck building game, I'm always like, I'm in. 'Cause I like the theme, I like to look at the pictures and the cards, and I like the characters. So that really kind of is a really good one for me. And so that's my number 9, the DC deck building.
One of the things I really like about that game is they also have the crisis mode,
Yes.
which is how I personally prefer to play the game. But you can play it cooperative or competitive, so there's a lot of options there as well.
And they also have confrontation now, too.
Yeah.
So you can actually play again, just one-on-one. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to play it, and I like the theme. So that kind of pushes it over for me. My number 8 is Tyrants of the Underdark.
Okay.
Tyrants of the Underdark was my favorite game from last year's Gen Con, and I just love that game. Not 2017, but 2016 Gen Con. I absolutely love that game. It kind of was the first game that I played that kind of took area control and deck building and put it together. The guys who designed that are the ones who designed the other game that we were talking about earlier, Lords of Waterdeep.
Yep.
And they did a really good job on Lords of Waterdeep, and they did an excellent job on Tyrants of the Underdark too. So I really like that game.
I had a lot of fun playing that game too, and I just haven't gotten to play it enough, so I couldn't put it on my list,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And I also like the Drow. So I'm a fan of the fantasy genre, and the Drow are one of my favorites. So that kind of helps with the theme too. So you're number 8.
Number 8 for me was Catan.
Oh,
just
yeah.
the base classic Catan.
Yeah.
And honestly, the reason it really made the list for me is Catan was the game that, after a number of years away from gaming through college and young adult life, I started playing Catan with a group of friends, and I'm like, oh yeah, board games are really fun. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So it's the game that really got me back into board gaming and playing more games more often.
Catan for me is a weird one because I love Catan when I play with good gamers, but my game group, I don't like to play Catan with them because they don't trade anything with me. Because they're like, Tom always wins games, so don't let him have anything.
Just don't trade with
so
him, period. There's an embargo.
Hey, they will trade with the bank before they'll trade with me. I'll be like, hey, I need that, I'll pay. Nope, I'm going to the bank.
But I'll give you 4 to 1.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, so depending on who you play with, I really like Catan, but I don't like it when I'm just kind of like shut out, from the game. So
well, that's something I think that's not just a Catan thing. That's a really any game kind of thing where you have to play with the right people. Otherwise, different games aren't fun.
Right, exactly.
Like there's groups of people that I play with that I won't play a certain set of games, but with a different group of people, it just like flip flops, and I don't want to play these games with that group, but they'll play these games with that group.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so your number 7?
Number 7 for me was Pandemic. So another classic, just really solid, mechanically sound game. It's a lot of fun to play. The weird thing for me is the base Pandemic game, I've never won that game. But I've had more fun playing it than a lot of other games. So the simple fact that I can still have fun and lose horribly at that game, tells me it's a fantastic game as well.
It is a fantastic game. It's a hard game, but
Yeah.
you know, if it was too easy, then you wouldn't like playing it, right?
Exactly.
So I like Pandemic as well. I've played it several times with my board game group, and we struggled to beat it, but we have beat it a couple times, and so that kind of gives you that yay. But I have personally never played the Legacy, and I think you have.
I have not played Legacy.
Oh, okay.
I've been holding off until I can find a group that we can meet regularly and play.
Okay.
I know a lot of people have played. I want to play it. I just have to find the right group and the right schedule to make that happen.
All right, my number 7 is a game that I thought was going to die a horrible death, and up until about a month ago, everybody else thought that too. But
so you have DC Deck Builder on there twice?
You know, it's Myth.
Oh.
And
okay.
Myth, the company that did Myth, they're going out of business. They tried for a year to sell the license, and I think they finally got it done. From the last I heard, they were able to sell it. We don't know who bought it yet. They haven't been able to. DNR has not allowed them to say who's bought it yet, but apparently somebody has bought it. I did a Kickstarter with it and got half the Kickstarter, so there's a good chance I will be able to get the other half of my Kickstarter, hopefully. But Myth is a great game. It's a dungeon crawl game, kind of like Descent, except for you have a deck of cards that you use to play your characters, and so all of their actions are done through playing cards.
Does it have a little bit of that, like the Pathfinder card game kind of mechanic to it?
Not really. It's
Okay.
more like a true dungeon crawl, because it has tiles you put out with little figures around the tiles, and then there's tactics, and then the only really thing that has to do with the cards is each character has a deck. And like I'm the archer, and so I have arrows in my deck, and I have to play them and shoot them at people and stuff like that. So it's a weird game, but it's a really good game, and it's a game that my board game group, one of my board game groups, played for probably about 6 or 7 months straight, like every Friday. And we really enjoyed it, and we went through the whole first level of the characters, and they leveled up. And so this Kickstarter that I got was to the next level, the Journeyman level.
Nice.
And so we're really wanting to play again, but we're wanting to see what we get from the company. But Myth is definitely still alive. Maybe it's on life support right now, but we'll see. I'm really curious to see who bought it, too. So depending on the company that bought the license, it may just take off and be a little more popular for everybody. So my number 6 is Ashes, Rise of the Phoenixborn. Nick knows I like this game because I come in and buy all the packs and everything from him when they come out, but I really like Ashes. I play Ashes primarily with my son, but I've met a couple people here at Titan Games I talked to last week that play it, and we're going to get together and play it as well. So the artwork on Ashes is one of the things that brings it into my top 10.
It is fantastic.
The woman who does the artwork for that, she is phenomenal, and she does every piece of artwork in the game. Like Magic does like a bunch of different artists that contribute art and everything, but this Ashes is done by one person, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful looking game.
There is a bonus to having one person doing the art too, in that all of the cards have a similar look.
Yes, they do.
You don't get a hugely different look to the cards from one deck to another, even though they may be quite a bit different, which in my opinion is fantastic because it doesn't look like this deck's from one game and this deck's from another game. But they do definitely have completely different styles to them at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and the decision to go with white, really stark white on the Ashes, really makes the cards pop with the colors and everything. It's just a beautiful game, and I think as much as I like it for the actual gameplay, which I do like the gameplay, I like it for the art probably almost as much as the gameplay.
Yeah.
So.
I've only played Ashes a few times. It's really fun, and I like the mechanic where you use the dice as like your mana pool essentially, which is really interesting.
Okay, your number 6.
6 for me was Stone Age.
Oh yeah,
a game that's been a little tricky to get a hold of the last year or two, but as far as worker placement goes, I like it because it's one of those games that is worker placement simplicity that just works the right way. Like everything about the game functions the way it should. There's not a bunch of crazy trippy mechanics that you're going to fall over as you're teaching people the game either. And you don't ever have to worry about not having enough food to feed your people. You just send people to hunt. Doesn't matter how many. So you can keep growing your tribe and just send more people to hunt.
I've never actually played Stone Age. I'd like to play it sometime. Every time I go to buy Stone Age, I think, oh, I've already got that because I have Settlers of the Stone Age. And then when I get home, I say, wait a minute, I don't have that. I have Settlers of the Stone Age. And that's happened like 3 or 4 times. So
we'll put it on your list.
Yeah, but I'd like to play it sometime if you ever have it here. Then we'll play it. So, all right, so you're number 5?
Sure, 5 for me was another classic. I went with Axis and Allies.
Oh, It
was one of the first really big board games that I got as a teenager, and I didn't get to play it enough. I always wanted to play it, so I actually learned how to kind of play a solo version of the game as well, which was kind of challenging. But it's a really fun game if you want to spend a day with some friends and try to figure out how World War II might have gone a little differently. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you got to spend a couple days, right?
Well, a day. Plan a full day.
Yeah, it looks like a really fun game to me, and I've watched people play. I like to just watch people play for like an hour of that game, but I've never played it because of the time that it takes to play it. But it is a cool looking game, all the little pieces and everything. It's very impressive. So. My number 5 is probably a game most people haven't heard of, but my number 5 is Puppet Wars. And Puppet Wars is a game that's put out by Weird, the makers of Malifaux.
Yeah.
And it's a board game they put out that really mimics the miniature game. So instead of playing with rulers and measuring and all that stuff, there's actually a board. And you have these little puppet characters that move around the board, and they have movement, like 2 or 3, not like inches and stuff. And so I like that better because I don't have to measure it and don't have to have a big area to play. They're little puppets. They're like voodoo dolls, and Zoraida, who is one of the characters, makes voodoo dolls of all the other characters in Malifaux and does bad things to them. And so you're playing the puppets, and they're fighting over toy chests or tool chests or something.
Okay.
And I really like it. And the thing I liked about it the most is just the Malifaux card mechanic. The Malifaux card mechanic is one of the things that I love about Malifaux. And all of you people who are playing Gloomhaven now, that's where they got that from. So when you draw 2 and take the lowest, or draw 2 and take the highest, that Malifaux, Weird has been doing that for years in Malifaux, and that's one of the things I really like. And so you play with kind of a standard deck of cards, and you flip cards, and you have a hand of cards where you can cheat fate. So if you get a bad flip, you can say, "Oh, I'm cheating fate." You play a card from your hand. So a lot of these concepts I really like, and so Puppet Wars is a really a game that I really actually enjoy. So my number 4 is Dungeon Dwellers. Another game that's probably not as well known, but it is a card game where you're playing a bunch of characters. Your character has a deck, and you play through a dungeon. But while you're playing through the dungeon, you have to make decisions on whether you want to buy more equipment to help the party, or whether you want to get treasure to help yourself. Because in the end, the person with the most treasure wins. But if anybody dies, you all lose.
Oh,
so it's this real big balancing act between when do I spend money on treasures to get me up in the game, or when do I spend stuff on equipment to help us stay alive? And there's rogues in the game that'll steal treasure from you, and each character plays so differently. I think that's one of the things I love about the game is each character plays so differently. That you can play a rogue and play a totally different game than if you're playing a fighter or a magic user or stuff. So, and every year at Gen Con, they come out with a new character deck. And so every time they come out with a new character deck, one more person can play the game. So I think it's up to like 8 players now that can play at one time. And so every year I go to Gen Con, I buy one of their new character deck, and I add it to my collection. And it's the one game that I always have with me when I go to game night. So in the bottom of my bag that I have, Dungeon Dwellers is in the bottom. It's
just
always there. It's always there in case anybody wants to play it. So that is my number 4, Dungeon Dwellers.
Number 4 for me was a game that's also fairly new. I chose Star Wars Rebellion. It's another kind of big Star Wars game that it sort of mixed some of the things I liked about Axis and Allies with the Star Wars universe, where it is a large-scale pitched battle kind of game, but at the same time there's different ways for the Rebellion to manipulate the board and do things without going to combat, which is something that isn't really that possible in Axis and Allies. That being said, the really, really fun thing, and the reason it made the list for me was if you pay attention to how the game is going as you're playing Star Wars Rebellion, you're essentially rewriting the first 3 movies as you play the game.
Yep.
And you can have just absolutely insane things happen that completely change how the Star Wars story would have been told if that's how the movies went. So that for me is just a ton of fun, and one of the reasons I really, really love the game and why it made it so high on my list.
The thing I like about that game is he's right. You can actually play the whole game without any kind of combat, because the one side is trying to hide and not be found, and the other side is trying to hunt them down. So you can. That's my favorite part of the game, is the hunt and hide portion of the game. one of the reasons I don't play a lot of Axis and Allies and stuff is because the battle mechanics are not that, not really my thing. But in this game, I like the fact that you can hide, you can move. There's a lot of subterfuge you can do, and what they've done with the characters, where the characters allow you to do these, have these abilities, is pretty cool too. So
one of the other reasons it made it really high for me is it's a 2 to 4 player game, and it plays well at 2 players, it plays well at 3 players, and it plays well at 4 players as well. And the mechanic that they put in for the 4-player version, where you have different people on each side of the board controlling different characters, it forces you to really think about how the order of operations that you want to do things in. And it never sets up a situation, at least in my experience, where we have to kind of gamble that they don't do something that messes up our plan. That's always the case, it seems like. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that part of it.
It's a really good game. It's one of my friends' favorite games.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're number 3.
Number 3 for me is another Star Wars game. Big surprise, but it's another game that got me really more heavily involved with the gaming community as a whole, and that's X-Wing. Star Wars Miniatures X-Wing game. Because of this game, it's number 3 on my list. Probably should have been a little bit higher now that I think about it, but it's a fantastic game. It made it this high on my list because of the community. When I started playing a lot more games, just a few years ago, really, I got involved with X-Wing. I started playing competitively. I played at Gen Con, I played at Worlds, I played multiple store championships, and just the people that I've met from literally around the world that play this game and enjoy playing the game and understand, yes, we are playing this at the highest level of competitiveness, but it's still a game, guys, and we need to have fun playing it. That part of it is why it made it so high on my list.
I've played X-Wing and I like X-Wing, and I think the thing for X-Wing that really kind of pushes it over the top for me is the movement, the way they do movement, the simplicity of the little movement templates that you put down and you move your ships on. That is so nice, because I've played a lot of games where you have to measure and you have to figure out, can I go here, can I go there, but that just kind of simplifies it. The only problem for me is I'm a terrible Starship driver, and so I run into everything. I don't know what it is. It's just like, maybe it's just my eyes are not that good, but like I think, oh, that's a 3, and then I run right into another ship or into a star or whatever's out on the table. So I'm not very good at driving, but it is a good game, and some of the mechanics in the game are really well done. So, all right. So
for you.
Is it back to me? Okay. So my number 3 is Lifeboats. My number 3 used to be my number 1 for years and years. Lifeboats is a game that will bring people to anger. Lifeboats is actually on a top 10 list. You can go out there and find it. Games never to play with angry people.
Yeah.
Because it brings people. I actually played this one time at a holiday, and my mother, who is my son's grandmother, was so mad at my son for kicking her out of the boat. And she's like, how could you kick your poor grandma out of the boat?
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, it really incites a lot of, feelings. And I think that's why I loved the game for so many years, because it just, like, really got people going. It get really people, like, mad or agitated that people are kicking them out of the boat. But it's one of my favorite games because it's kind of like Survivor in a board game, right? So you're all in these lifeboats, you're trying to get to the land, but not everybody's going to make it to the land, and people vote who they want to get out of the boats. And you can beg, you can make deals with people, be like, don't vote me out and I won't vote you out. And then people backstab each other and vote people out anyway. It's just a really fun game for the crazy mechanics that it has. It's a really hard game to find. It's a Z-Man game, and some of my board game group have purchased it, but they've had to wait like months and months and months to find it. So it's not that popular of a game. It goes in and out of print pretty often. But if you have a chance to play it, if you don't mind really making people mad and upsetting them, then it's a good game. The one thing I heard somebody say one time is that in games people do bad things to you, but in lifeboats people gang up on you, and everybody it makes you feel like nobody loves you. So that's my number 3, Lifeboats.
Another prime example of playing the right game with
the right people. Yes. Yeah, that game can bring about a table flip if you're not careful. So my number 2 is Blood Rage. That also was my number 1 for a long time. My 1, 2, 3s were easy because they were just, this was my number 1 and it got knocked to number 2, and this is my number 1 and got knocked to number 3. But Blood Rage is a game that I actually love to play. I will play it anytime anybody wants to play. I like the Viking theme, the Ragnarok. type thing going on. I have the Kickstarter version, so I love to play with Finnerer, and my game group says that when we play, Tom's not allowed to have Finnerer because they hate Finnerer. So anyway, but I love the game. I think Cool Mini or Not did a great. They did great bringing this game out, and the rules are really well done. The interesting thing about Blood Rage is Blood Rage was based on another game that came out earlier, and my #1 game is also based on a game that came out earlier. And I think some of these games, when they come out and then they realize there's some problems with them, and then they reprint them or redo them. Yeah. It's not really a reprint, but a redo. They fix a lot of the problems that came about in the other game, and so I think my top 2 games kind of benefited from that. But Blood Rage was out as a different game. I think it was called Ragnarok or something like that. Then the guy who
Instead of releasing an FAQ, we're just going to put out a new game.
Yeah, they just put out a whole new game.
Yeah.
I don't think the original games of either one of these were all that popular.
Yeah.
And so I think they just said, well, we don't really have to do that because nobody ever played these games.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, a lot of people don't even know about Ragnarok, I don't think, that came before Blood Rage. But Blood Rage is a really fun game. It's Viking and a lot of card play. It's got drafting. It's got area control. So it has a lot of different concepts in it, but I really like Blood Rage, and that's my #2 game.
One of the things I really like about Blood Rage is while it is a miniatures game, you can solidly play that game in 45 minutes to an hour.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And there's a lot of really good in-depth mechanic-wise game play in that 45 minutes. It's not a game you're signing up to play for 3 hours that has super in-depth mechanics and all these complexities. It's a 45-minute game that has good complexity to it.
And it has a lot of different strategies to win. So there's a strategy where you can win, you just get your guys killed. Yeah. You just go out there and lose
everybody to die. And I get all the honor.
Yeah, they get the honor from Ragnarok, and so there's, you could start the game and be like, I'm doing terrible. Well, I'm going with the get killed strategy. And actually win the game. So that's one of the things I like about it as well. Yeah. All right, your #2.
Sure, #2 for me was Dungeons & Dragons. It is one of the reasons I started playing games was me and a couple buddies in my friend's basement when we were like 12 or 13 years old playing some Dungeons & Dragons. I think we had the red box at that time. Yeah. That goes back a little ways. And some dungeon tiles. And we were making up our own adventures and going out and doing all kinds of fun stuff. So that's really what got me really started in gaming at a very young age, outside of, playing Life or Monopoly or anything like that. So, quite frankly, Dungeons & Dragons is the reason this store exists, and I've told a lot of people this story, but Josh, who's one of the other original owners of Titan Games, he was in that group of people that we played with. And then when he went to college, he played D&D again, and Mark, who was the other original owner of Titan Games, was a DM, and they both DM different groups, and after college, that's how Titan Games got started, and then I got involved with it because I reconnected with Josh, we started playing again, and it just kept going from there. So
yeah, earlier I said name a game that has the legs that Magic does, and
Dungeons
here it is
Dragons
right here.
Well, and it's because Dungeons & Dragons, Magic was invented by people that were waiting around for friends to play Dungeons & Dragons. So they kind of go hand in hand too.
Yep, yeah, and Dungeons & Dragons is a wonderful game. Gary Gygax, the guy who developed it originally, I don't know that he ever made a lot of money off of Dungeons & Dragons. I think it changed hands so many times, but the thing is, he kind of tapped into something that I don't think anybody had tapped into before, and just the ability to kind of have a game where you kind of make up your own game. You have your character, you feel like you're playing a character, and so on. So I think that Dungeons & Dragons kind of had a unique area, and then a lot of other games have tried to, over the years, to mimic it. But I don't think anybody has done it as well as Dungeons & Dragons. Some people could argue that Pathfinder, but keep in mind, Pathfinder
is D&D.
Yeah, it bought a Dungeons & Dragons license and then sparked off of that. So starting from scratch, I don't really think a lot of people have done it as well as Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah, they made a set of rules for you to make up your own game with.
Yes.
And I will say the most fun campaigns that I've had are games where the DM is essentially helping us tell a story as we adventure through this land. And it's about the story. And yeah, there's combat, and that part is fun, and equipping your characters, and getting cool abilities and things. And those are fun, but it's really about, again, telling yourself a story as you're going through this world.
And back in the day, they actually would let people make up their own stories, and then they would print them. Yep. So Dungeons & Dragons would actually print them in modules.
They still do a lot of that now.
Yeah.
It's just digital instead.
Yeah, it's all online now. Yeah.
$1.50 copy at your game store. You can can buy them online or you can buy them wherever you need to.
Yeah, I highly agree with you. The Dungeons & Dragons is definitely high on the list and definitely something that definitely needs to be mentioned.
Yeah.
So. All right, are you ready for your number one?
I don't know.
Do we need a drum roll?
Yeah.
Well, you get to go first. So.
Sure. So my number one is a game called Battle Masters. It's a old Milton Bradley game that was really the first miniatures game I got too, and part of it was, I was 12 or 10 years old when I got it, and the mat for this thing's like 4.5 feet wide, 4.5 feet wide. And there's all kinds of little terrain pieces, and there's a cool plastic castle that you build, and then you got goblins fighting this army, and there's a whole scenario and campaign mode to it as well that you can play that has different. You use the same map, but it's got different terrain settings, and there's different fortifications, and all of your units have different abilities. It's a game that I think in a lot of ways, the miniatures games we have today, it started a lot of those simple mechanics that make miniatures games fun, and the dice rolling for combat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a game I'm not familiar with, but it sounds pretty cool.
Well, I believe that I've arranged to play a campaign here in a couple weeks with a friend, so we'll see how the
I'll have to stop by and watch
goes.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. All right, well, my number one game, and this is kind of weird, but my number one game I've only actually owned for 24 hours, the actual game. But that has a caveat. I actually printed and played this game for over a year. I absolutely love this game. It knocked Blood Rage out of the number one spot for me. And that game is Mythic Battles Pantheon. And if you watch my channel, you could have easily guessed what my favorite game was because I talk about it all the time. I have videos of me playing it. I have videos of me making the print and play. I have videos of this and that and the other. And just yesterday, I put out a video of an unboxing for the actual core game. And I just love this game. You play gods who recruit heroes and monsters and troops, and you're trying to run around the board and pick up infalas, and you can win the game without any combat, because if you get 4 infalas, you win. There are tons of scenarios. I just got the base game yesterday, and I didn't even know this, but now that I have the base game, the game that I've been playing for a year, the skirmish, there's tons of different ways to play the game. There's even solo mode, so I can play by myself and try to keep the Hydra from eating the villagers and all that stuff. And so it is a really well done game. Monolith, who did the game, they did an excellent job. The sculpts are beautiful. And one of the things I like about the game is Monolith said, we're not going to worry about how things fit on the board. Yeah. We're going to make this stuff to scale.
We're just going to make it cool.
So they have troops that are like 2 inches tall. They have titans, which are 8 inches tall, that you can play in the game. So I really like that when you look at the board, there's 3D elements on the board, like trees and rocks and stuff like that. And so they did a really good job. And the gameplay is really fun. It's a very, very tactical game. You got to make a lot of choices. They've done a lot of really cool things with the deck. So if you run out of cards, your opponent gets all their cards from their deck in their hand.
Ooh,
so you got
instant reload.
Yeah, and so like you can't just burn through your cards, or you're really helping the other guy. Yeah. And so there's a lot of really cool mechanics on it. And another thing is, I did the Kickstarter, and when I did the Kickstarter, they said this Kickstarter will ship in December of 2017. And everybody's like, yeah, right, all these miniatures and all that. And it actually got mine yesterday in November 2017. It's the first Kickstarter I've ever done that actually delivered before it said that it was going to. So
Monolith's been doing some really fantastic work lately.
Yeah, and they kind of jump started Mythic Battles off of their Conan. Conan did really well, and people really like that. And now I think they're taking the Conan engine and they're making a Batman game. So so that's kind of cool.
That'd be an interesting.
Yeah, so you've got the villains, just kind of like Conan. But yes, if you have a chance to check out Mythic Battles, check it out. It's a really cool game, and I absolutely love it. And that's my number one game. So.
Awesome. Well, that's been an interesting list. I don't think we had a single game that we both had on our list.
I know. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys want to comment on what your favorite games are, feel free to put them in the show notes. If you don't agree with some of our game picks, let us know. We're always welcome to hear your complaints.
The grievances.
The grievances, yeah. But we hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the comments below also. And until we see you again, I'm Tom Sidener.
I'm Nick Jones.
And happy gaming. This video was provided by The Lonely Gamer. To see more of our news, reviews, and videos, please visit us at lonelytabletopgamer.com.